The goal of today's talk is to give you an impression how you can work with your React applications without any ecosystem except React. Because everyone, like when you start doing something with React, everyone like wants to add Redux, React Road, a lot of other things. But in reality, React is very powerful by itself. And today I want to show you how to do and work just with React without any additional libraries. Tomorrow we'll have another talk when we are going to add Redux to the current application, and I will talk why you even maybe need or don't need to add these to add Redux to your app. And yeah, the last announcement that today's talk will be actively using ECMAScript 2016. So if you, and I suppose that you like have any knowledge of this new JavaScript. If it's not the case, I will start sharing my screen. Just a sec. Yeah, can everyone see my screen, I hope? This is a really great article called from on Ponyfoo about ECMAScript 6 overview and 350 bullets. So if you don't have time to go like really deep with ECMAScript, just read this and you will be really good to go to work like on top of everything. And if you want to go deep, there are also a lot of links in this article how to get this. Now I will send this to the chat. How to do that? So yeah, send the link. And now we're going to start with our application. First of all, I will show what we're going to build. So imagine the case you're on your day job and designer sends you this, like this image. This is an enormously cool chat room, and obviously you're building a Slack clone or something like this. And okay, this could be a static image, but the idea is that you can switch the rooms, you can type your name, send your message and everything, and it will be sent to the chat to everyone. So it will be like real-time messages. And if someone will be connected to this screen, like on a different browser, it will be updated in real time without any refresh or anything. So this will be the case. But obviously it's not the most complex app in the world, but it will help you to understand how to start working with React and thinking in components, in terms of components, which I think is really important. Just before we start coding, a little bit more questions. Do anyone here have React experience? You can say aloud or you can type in the chat. Okay, great. So I think, yeah, hi, Greg. So yeah, we are going to start then from beginning. But I assume everyone knows what React is. It's like the UI library, initially UI library for the web, which allows you to work in JavaScript and to render as a result DOM to the browser. It's the idea. So everything here, it's rendered by React. And in terms of components that I said before. How are we going to start doing this? Before everything, React was also a little bit complex because it required everyone to understand things called like Webpack or Browserify or Gulp, all these like React and JavaScript, fatigue ecosystem. Now everything is way more simpler thanks to Dynamo, who released a thing called Create React App, which is everything you need out of the box. Also I'm assuming that everyone kind of a little bit know what's Node.js is and how to work with NPM, so I will just skip this part. If it's not the case, just again, stop me, I will do a quick introduction. How to start with working with React? You just install Create React App, call Create React App, your app name, go to this new directory and call npm start. So I can do this right now. This is the directory I've already created. It will obviously call npm, so I will not do this because of the network requests and 5 minutes that we are going to wait. So it's already done here. And we can cd into it and call npm start. And it's telling us that it's starting the development server. and compiling everything, and we're done. So the app is running at localhost 3000. So we can go here, and that's we're going to see like our initial React application. If we open the code, we'll see that's not much here, and everything is kind of simple. So we have node modules folder that we're going into. It's the static node modules. Then we have public directory with our static assets, for example, index.html that we want to see. It's just shortcut for favicon, React app, and one div, which is important, this ID root. So no scripts, no anything. Create React app is doing everything for us, so no need to worry about this at all. Then the main folder which we are going to work, it's called src. We have a couple of extra files here that I've already added to save the time, but we're going to only into that, which is created by Create React App. So the main one is index.js. This is the entry point of our application that is going to be like run. It's importing React, React DOM, and app as ECMAScript 6 modules. Then CSS, and this is my line. It's not it's not true. This is by default. And then calling React DOM render, our application inside the document get element by the root. So as far as you remember from before, we have only one div here, and the whole React application will be rendered inside this div. So if we inspect it, we're going to see that the case. We have div ID root, and then the first div is going to be app, and this is generated by React already. This is not a static HTML. Again, if you have any questions, just stop me and ask by unmuting yourself. Then, what is these brackets here? And looks like HTML. This is not really HTML. That's the thing called JS6. This is really a syntactic sugar on top of JavaScript. So Babel, it's the JavaScript like compiler interpreter, I don't know what it is now, that converts the JavaScript, so the new JavaScript, ECMAScript 2016, 17 or anything, to the JavaScript that the current browser can understand. But generally, it's more like a universal transpiler that can do anything with your JavaScript. So in this case, Babel is going to see all these brackets and then convert them to the just normal JavaScript function. But for developers, it's way easier to write components in terms of brackets, how we did with XHTML, HTML, XML, or anything, because it's just like we already got used to it, to thinking in these terms. So just remember that when you see these brackets in JS6, it's not magical at all. It's just syntax to write components. But as a result, they will be just transpiled to JavaScript. So really interesting thing, it's going into app here. And it's a little bit more complicated as before. Again, it's imported in React. It's importing logo. It's from SVG file. This is a Webpack thing. And when you can import static assets from anywhere. And then it's also importing CSS. And this is finally where React starts. We have a class that extends from the component and only one method called render. And here, as you can see, it's nothing more complex than classic HTML, which is, again, it's not HTML, it's JS6. And as you can see, some differences here. For example, class is not, it's not class, it's class name. And also additional brackets on top, but it's almost the same. And also, which is cool, we can change something here, go to the browser, and it will be automatically, I hope, sorry, I need to refresh, and then I will do this because I've started the server. It's automatically gets all the updates and refreshes the page for us. So no need to do auto refresh or anything. So Create React App is doing everything for us. We just need to start writing our code. Any questions for now? I will continue. We have chat. SFCs. Sorry, what is SFCs? Yes, we are going to start now with a stateless functional component. how you can define variables like logo, for instance. Logo, in importing logo here, it's Webpack stuff when it's not really React. So if you want to start with these like static assets, I'd advise you to go to read about what Webpack can do. Really, what Webpack is doing here is just like importing inside logo some data. It depends on your loaders and Webpack loaders that you can then just insert here. So if we go and see the image, the result of this image, we can see that it's some URL. So Webpack is converting the file into URL, then you can just insert here. But it's not React at all. In terms of any other variables, and this is ECMAScript 6 and importing from the ECMAScript 6 modules. I hope that's the answer in the question. So let's continue then. We have this mockup, and designer just sent it us, and we are starting to develop in it. As you can see, it's kind of not really complex, obviously, but a lot of happening here. We have some channels on the left. We have messages here. We have the whole also, it should be scrollable when we have more messages pane. And we have the form, which is also handles events and can send the messages and everything. And obviously when we refresh, it's going to the network. As you can see, it's waiting for some time. And then it loads the data. So it's going to the Firebase and loads the data from the Firebase. So a lot of things happen here. But what is cool really with React, and I think this is why it's one of the things why it's popular, that it allows you to limit yourself and limit your brain burden in terms of components. Because when you start developing things, and I hope I can manage to show you to you today, you are not thinking about the whole complexity. You're thinking about just like small components and small isolated components. And by this, you can make everything really performant in terms of the team, because you can just pass your components that you develop to your colleagues and they can use them like the bricks to build the application. Or even when you're like a solo developer working with a project, you just don't thinking about the whole complexity of application. You're just working with this small branch. So for example, what we can start doing here, like out of the box, when we see, I think I will going to start with these messages, because it's obviously the important things here and we need to develop them. But I don't want to start doing like channels and this selector or form or anything. I'm going to start with a message. Let's remove all these. And as you can see, if I will just save everything now, we have now totally blank page, a blank canvas that we can start working with. Let's do a message. How we can do this? I'm placing, if I can type right, it will be a lot of typos, so I will really appreciate the help from you. It will be two divs. As we remember, two divs, it's like author name and the text. So let's do two divs. I will automatically add CSS classes that I've before added to here to app CSS. I just need to clean this and then comment the prepared CSS that we have. We will not waste time doing this. And again, because of Webpack, we can just import index CSS here, and Webpack will do its magic to insert everything into styles here. As you can see, all this CSS is inserted as a style tag into the head. No need to do anything from our perspective. With the class name, message, author, and then we can do then I can do div, and then it will be the second with class name text, and it will be hi. And as you can see, we have something. It's really ugly, but at least we already have out of the box rendered something. And yeah, this is how it's working. So obviously we can wrap this into one more div to make everything more construct right, which will be message. yeah, at least now it have a border and everything. It's vertical line, but it's because of the flexbox and currents and everything. So we can just ignore it now. So we can do the same as we have here, like Ben hi and Jen hi to you too. But this is not really scalable, as you can see. But at least it's working out of the box. I have everything. So what React components is in reality? This is like a class and extends component, a lot of complex stuff, but we can make it easier. And sometimes it's really, React really forces you and like asks you, and this is the best practice to make it as easy as it's good. And the most like simple React component is the functional React component, which is like a pure function. And normally it's really just a function that gets the data. And as a result, it returns DOM. Not really DOM, it returns JSX and React elements, but from your perspective, it's the function that gets, again, the data, transforms it somehow, and then returns the another components or just these divs. Why it's like stateless and functional and everything, because it's pure. Every time you send one data into it, you will get the same response every time. So let's do like the stateless functional components message. It sounds really scary, but in reality, as you can see, as you will see now, it's really a function. So we'll have constant message, which will require props, and will return us everything we just wrote. Oops, this div. So we'll just copy paste it here. And obviously we cannot use Jen hi to you too. We need to do something, some interpolation here, because we need to pass the params and get the response. So we will do props author and props text. Every time when you see these curly braces in JSX, this is just means that between these curly braces will be a normal JavaScript. So Babel will not try to parse or anything, and we'll just call it, yeah, it will call the JavaScript itself. Someone have a question? Yeah, feel free to ask. You can unmute yourself if you want. How would we interact with the actual DOM element or reactor and element with React? Is there any special syntax structure, for instance, with jQuery? Yes. I think we will cover this soon. The thing is called ref, so if you want, you can go and Google it before, but yeah, we will cover this soon. Sorry, I will, yeah. Yep. And now we can render these two messages. So we will change the first one. It will be like this message. We need to pass author. It will be Ben and text hi. And also, if you see that this component is not having any children or anything inside it, like we have an HTML. So for example, this is like the thing inside this div. Message doesn't do that. It's the component by itself. So we need to auto close it with this thing, backslash. Let's try if it's working. And if it's working, we don't say anything differently, but as you can see now, we can use the same with Jen. And it will be hi to you too. And we can remove this. And this is really what React is. You just having components that returns another component, and you are passing like some properties to it. Another question from chat. So you used an SFC for message, but ES6 class for app. This is because app will need lifecycle hooks eventually. This is, no, for app, I haven't used anything. That is what Create React app generated for us. But you're right. The difference would be in lifecycle hooks, and we'll get to that point really soon. So also because of ES6, we can make these props author and props text a little bit more beautiful by using the structuring. So we can just destruct here and tell JavaScript that we want from the object props these two properties, and we need JavaScript again to pass it into the variable called author and called text. So then we can just author and text here. Save it, reload, and it's working. So yeah, and as you can see, this thing I theoretically can pass to my coworker, colleague, or anyone, and they can render anything with this message, because passing just object with author and text will render them every time the same data, the same DOM that we have here. Really simple. So the next step for us will be, because we cannot hard code this band high and everything for every time, we obviously need to make it more dynamic, because we'll have like different messages here. So what we can do, I will go to my seed data, because I have messages already here. So we can have some data. I will just copy paste. As you can see, it's just an array of objects where we have IDs, texts, authors, and channel ID. You can ignore this for now. Imagine that our server returns the data like this. And now we need to render this. Again, because of React, I can totally ignore for now server or like anything like network requests, anything. I just want to work with a pure JavaScript simple objects and primitives like array. So let's do that. What we need to do, theoretically, we need just to iterate through this array and pass every object to the message, like all the params that we need. We can do this. With curly brackets, we are using just plain JavaScript here. So I will use messages, and this is the constant defined here. I will map through it. And I will again use the structuring. I will use author, that we already said, and I will use text. I just need to calculate rate, and then I will return a message with author equals author, and text equals text. And if I did everything correctly, we're seeing all the messages rendered dynamically. And as you can see, it reads really naturally. You're just mapping through an array and passing the new params to the message component. As a result, here you have an array of components, and all of them are rendered here. Any questions for now? No? Okay, I will continue then. But as we said this before, if we want to do like some CSS or anything, we can just separate all the logic to more readable things, because when the next programmer came to this project, they will see this message maps, some destructuring here happening. It's really complex. Can we make it more like human readable? I think we can. We can just introduce a new function and a new functional component called list, which will just get messages and return a new diff. That's the only problem with React now, that all like components should return one like React node, React element, so one JSX node in reality. So we have list. You cannot just return array from here and use it like React component, because React will tell you, hey, it's not correct. Please wrap everything into one node. So that's why we need to use diff here, but also because we have a new class name to use, which is message. I can spell today. Message pane list. And then we can just copy this here. And then we can just use list and pass messages as messages. it's working and it's now horizontal because of the right CSS finally. Yeah, but if you go to the console, you will see that logo is defined here on this, that React is now complaining about each child in array or iterator should have a unique key prop, check the render method of list. If we can go to the list. And this is because that React doesn't know how to differentiate between messages. Because from its perspective, when we render the list, we have like some amount of nodes, but React is clever and it tries to minimize the amount of DOM modification that it needs to apply on something, on any update. So for example, we added like to this list 5 new messages. What React should do? It should add 5 divs to the end, or maybe change the 2-second divs or anything. Or if you want to change the text of this message, how React should render this in the most efficient way. To do this, React needs to differentiate between these messages. So how this message differentiates from this one. And we need to help it to do that by providing a parameter called key. And this attribute should be like unique in the same level of between like your siblings. So for example, if we have messages here, we just need to provide some key that will be unique only for these messages. No need to think about the whole application. So in this case, we have IDs. So we have like 1, 2, 3, 4. That's not really IDs. They're not really unique, but they are good enough. So if we just add the structure in here and we pass ID here, it will render, everything will work. And as you can see, there is no more warning. And if we go to the special React tab, which is just Home extension, we can just go through all the components here, and we can see that now they have special keys. Yeah, done. And yeah, also now Webpack is complaining that we're not using logo because we removed it. So no need to here, not here, where it was. I think here. No need to import it at all. So yeah, now we have finally clean console. So, any questions for now? Okay, then again, what's the next step will be? The next step we need, let's implement our message pane and message list more. So, because for now, as you can see, there's everything here. It's kind of inside the app.js. And someone have a question? Yeah, feel free. You can unmute yourself if you want, if it will be faster than typing. Okay, when using a function in map, I've gotten used to having 2 parameters, item and I, and using I as a key. Is it necessary to define that? No need, because the first parameter will be just an object. And you're thinking about like using I as a key here. It depends, yeah, because normally if you don't have any siblings there except these messages or anything, it will work, because what React really wants here is to have unique IDs between like the siblings in the list. So it's really, if you don't have any performance problems, then feel free to use what it works for you. But it's not really necessary. The main idea here that key should be unique between, like in the siblings role. So the next step will be to move everything that we have here from our app. It's a component itself, and we started mixing messages, lists, and everything here. So let's introduce this right pane called message pane. Let's create a new component. To do that, I will just create a new file in src, like new folder really, called message pane. And I will create index.js file there. And I will start copy everything to do there. So we'll start with messages. Zoom. UI is killing me. Then let's copy, cut and paste here. And what theoretically now we're returning is a list and messages. So we can do the same from our message pane. Let's do const message pane. Will be just a pure function. That again, we need to return diff. So we can do list. We can do this theoretically. Yeah, we can just do that. And we need to export default message pane. And we forgot the only thing, we need to import React, no need for component from React, or JSX will not work out of the box. And this is done. Now we can import our newly done message pane from message pane. And just change it here. If I did everything correctly, and I'm not sure. Yeah, we have a problem. Yeah, it's still working. But as you can see now, we defined new boundaries because app.js, it just, you can go and read it again really easily. You can understand what's happening here. You have a div with class name app, and then you're rendering message pane. Everything is clear and simple. And if you go to the message pane, also it's pretty simple now, message and list, and you are rendering list itself. Let's wrap it for to have a class. We will wrap it in another div with a class name, message pane. Yeah, we have a new border here, everything now. And to be like really correct, because components by itself, they are fully isolated. And by fully isolated, they should be ideally fully isolated. I mean that they don't have only JavaScript and React that renders the DOM here. They also can have their own styles. And for now, I have like all styles bundled together with app.css, just so we can save time. But it will be right, and I will just show you it once as an example, to have the styles that correspond to this component together with this component. So that's why we have a folder here. We can do this, we can do index CSS here, and I will copy the CSS that relates to this message pane. Everything that starts with message pane. There. I did that, and now I just need to import this CSS in my message pane component. And again, back to normal. And so now message pane theoretically totally isolated because the data is here, CSS is here, the DOM is here, so we can just copy paste these folders some in the different project, and we will see totally the same results there. And also why it's good, because if we want to continue developing exactly this component, we don't need to think about app or any other component that we can have in our application. We can just work with this folder and in our own like mental boundaries without overwhelming ourselves with extra information or extra anything. But when you want to start working with other components, you need somehow, in some way, to tell them what properties and what parameters you're expecting from them. So for example, message pane now contains all these messages. This is not really correct because the data should come and could come from like the totally different sources, because message pane should not like think about the data itself. It should just get the data and render it to the page. So let's move these messages to app back here and pass them to message pane as a property. So we did that, and if it surrenders, everything is still working. But the problem here, what will be if we will not pass this? So some developer just got this message pane and tries to render. And obviously we have a JavaScript exception now because we're trying to go and map through undefined, because the message is undefined here. To solve this, we have two things. The first one, we can tell another developer what we are expecting from them. So we can start with message pane prop types. The thing is called. So we are telling what we are wanting. And we can do messages, and it will be React prop types array. So we're telling that messages should be an array, and also that it's required. That we cannot work, this component will not work if we will not provide the messages array. And if we will do that before fail, you can see also that React is telling us that, hey, failed prop type required prop messages was not specified in message pane. So we're not passing this. This is one way to kind of fix this, to tell the other developer that you were expecting something from them. The other way is to do a thing called default props. This thing will be used if you're not pass anything to this component. So in this case, what we want an empty array. So you need lowercase p on React prop types here. No, it's not the case because it's the property of React. Here it's true, but here no, it should be prop types on top. Yeah, as you can see now, it's kind of working. At least it's not failing because we are passing the empty array, so nothing to render. Yeah, I can try to use the lowercase just to be sure if I'm not mistaken. Yes, but as you can see, it's cannot read property array of undefined, so it should be uppercase. Let's fix that back by returning messages. But at least now, if we pass this message pane to some of the developer, this component will work at least without any properties. And also this component will tell if you are not passing something to it. Yes, so we can continue. The next step here will be to introduce the form, and it will be interesting. Maybe someone have any questions before we are going to the next step? No questions. Okay. So with the form, we can do the same. Let's create a new component inside the message pane. And this is, oh, sorry. Do you need is required when defining default props? It depends. I sometimes like it to make everything is required and then provide default props. So if for some case I'm not using default props anymore, I can just comment it. I will see what it's failing now. So yeah, this is kind of my personal experience, just to make everything as required and then provide default props where I could and where I couldn't. So yeah, with the form, again, it's a cool thing that when you think inside the components, that you are really building a component tree. So if you can see now that the message pane is inside the app. So this is kind of the first branch. And now message pane also will consist of the list and of the form. Lists and messages are kind of simple, so no need to move them to a separate file because it's just like 4 lines of the code. But form will be a more complicated one. So let's create a form index.js. We will create a separate folder for it. This is not required to create folders or index.js files. I can just create form.js file here and require it the same way. But again, if you want to have CSS there or maybe any assets or anything, just use folders. But from React perspective and Webpack perspective, there will be no difference at all. So we are going to have, again, import React act from React. And let's export for now just a super simple post function, and let's return div form. And now we can just render form here. Like this. And as you can see now, it's here and it renders. Again, the cool thing is when we go to the message pane and we go into this render method, the function itself, we can read it normally. We have a list of messages, and then we have a form. So let's start doing our form. It will be a lot of code now, because forms are normally really verbose. We'll have message pane form, and then we will have a div with class name, message pane form container. And then we are going to have, not promise, just, 2 paragraphs and 2 inputs. It will be type. As you can see, it's almost normal HTML with just like small differences with class name. Text, and we'll have placeholder like login here, please, because no spaces in the name. And this, yeah, no need for anything more. And then the second paragraph, we're going to have a text area. Normally in HTML, you remember that text area is like kind of block element. You will need to close this like this. But React unified everything to have like to be kind of input here. So it will be totally the same in terms of closing. Class name, message, placeholder, your message. And we have another paragraph for button. And we need to close the button fully. Yay, it renders. So we have everything, but and as you can see, it's working. Obviously, nothing happens because we haven't coded yet. But yeah, we have our normal form without any problems, and it's readable. Now we just need to think what our form should do. It should get the user input, and when we click on the button, it should somehow grab these user input from the input fields. So we can get these from the JavaScript and then do something with this data. Normally you're sending it to the server, or you're like passing it to another function or something like this. But yeah, there's a lot of things here happening. And also, normally when you send, like your click and send, you pass this to the server, but you need also to clean up the fields and work closely with the DOM. So a lot of like interactions, not really just like rendering from top to bottom. You're just like going back and forth to the DOM, trying to get the data and then update the data. There was a question before how we can do this, and in React there is this thing called ref. So you can, on any element, you can say ref and pass the string or a function, because string, it was previous, like in the previous versions, it's still working, but it's kind of deprecated. So better to pass the function here. And so, for example, we can do this name input put equals, we need to do this node, will be node. And now it will not work because, yeah, you can set this is not working because we have a function here, and this is stateless component to React. And so every time you need to work with refs, you need to convert the stateless component to the full-fledged component that we saw here with extend component. Let me close everything that we don't need. Let's do this. I'm just getting component from React, changing const form to class form that extends component. Adding render method. Which will return everything that we wrote over before. I hope it's correct. Yeah, now we don't have any problems. We're still rendering the same thing. And yeah, that's the only difference that you can see between components, like functional components and the class components. You need to define render method and return the same thing here. Any questions for now? I will continue. Okay. So as I said before, now we have these, if we ask for this name input, we are going to have it at some moment. So how I can check this? I can tell my button to do something for me when user clicks on it. So for example, on click, I can pass the function, like any function. Let's create a new method because we're using class now. So we can do on click here. And pass this on click. And if I do like console log, we'll see that it's working. No rocket science at all. We just like passing normal on click handler and passing the method here. But the problem starts a little bit problematic, I think, then when we want to use this here. So for example, if I do this name input, and just I will try to log it, I will have cannot read property name input of null. Because on click method now is unbound and it's not really bind to this. To fix this, you just need to use constructor method. Called super here. And then just do this on click equals this on click bind this. So we can, by this, we can just bind this to the element instance, to the class instance here. If we save, it will be refreshed. As you can see now, we have this input, and it's a real DOM node. And this, I hope this answers the previous question, how you can interact with DOM. Now here, in this name input, you are getting not a React element, you are getting like the real DOM node. So you can do whatever you want with this without any problem. You can even wrap it with jQuery if you want, if it's easier for you. Yeah, so theoretically, I don't remember if it's val or value, because yeah, I'm not really working a lot with the raw. Yeah, it's value, obviously. So now I can get the value out of my input. But let's stop and think, is like the correct solution here, and can we do better? Because when you start writing these like low-level DOM elements handling, it's like, again, returning to the times of jQuery and a lot of complex logic when we are working with jQuery. So is it, again, the right thing? Let's see what we have in our form. We have a state, because we have a current state of this field, we have a current state of this field that I can enter. And also, so yeah, when every time you're operating with a user and you wanted to get a feedback out of it, and you are having something to render which you cannot control before, it's a state. To implement this state and to do it like correctly and not you working like with a raw DOM input, we just need to introduce the state into our component. So that's why, again, we need to convert this form before from functional component to the like full-fledged React component, because state by itself is a thing that functional component could not have. Functional component is a pure function. You're passing some data, you're getting something in the response. There is no like mutation or intermediate state that you can have. In the full-fledged component, this is not the case. We can have state here. And let's control the state, and let's show the state somehow. First of all, let's remove all these native DOM operations that we have for now. And let's try to control the output of our input, because what we need to do, we have an input and user types there something. So on every user type or key press, we need to update the local state of this form component, because we need to know what's the current value of every input we have and what we can do with this. But also then we need to render it back, because we need only one source of truth to be, and it should be our state. We don't need to sync like two things and to do two-way data bindings. So to do that, we can provide obviously value to our input. So let's see if I can do, if I add empty string here. If it reloads, I cannot type anymore here, because React is not updating the value of the input. I'm pressing, it sends the events, but its value is still here. It's hard-coded to empty string. If I do something differently, it's name now, but I cannot type again. And React tells us, because it's kind of known problem for when you start, you provide the value prop to a form field without onChange handler. This will render a read-only field. If the field should be immutable, use default value, otherwise set either onChange or read-only. If we do onChange, as React tells us, again, it will be a function called this, how I called it before, so update name. Let's do update name. We can do update name. It will get an event as a parameter, and we can do just console log. Let's do events, target, value. And yeah, we also need, no need to bind for now, because yeah, as you can see, when I'm trying to type different things, it's passing like the last value, but not updating here. But again, how we can update the state and how we can even set the state. Before we are starting thinking like in a state and updating it, we need to define what our initial state is. To do this, we just need to set up this state in the this state in the constructor, and this is just a plain object. So, for example, name should be an empty string, and message should be an empty string too, because by default, form is empty. We did that, and let's now render not name hard-coded here. Let's render this state name. Now the form is empty. I still cannot type. Okay, we're getting the events in the console. So let's update the name. we can do this, set state name, event, target value, and let's do trim. And we need again to bind this, otherwise this will not work. This is the only problem of using ES6 classes, because before it was like React create class and it was doing auto binding for you. But now ES6 classes is more like generally used, so you need to bind this now in the constructor. Yay, I can type now. And if I switch to the React tab, go to the message pane, go to the form, and click here, as you can see, I have my state. It shows that message is empty and name this gibberish that I just input. Let's do the same for the message. And again, feel free to ask me anything if you have any questions. Please update message. To message, and no need to trim it. And yeah, we just need to bind it. Is the way you're handling the form the best practice? If you're using just pure React, yes. It's, I hope so, because it's what's inside the documentation. And when all the forms that I wrote before in my applications, they all using this thing. So update message. Yay, we can now type the form, we can now type the message, and if again we go to the form component inside the React, the React tab, you can see that we have our state in the message. The last thing that's left is to pass this onClick handler, and it will be, I think let's rename it to onSubmit, because it makes more sense than onClick, because click what, and form submit is kind of right. What we need to do here, we don't know for now. This form, what it should do, it should get the current state of itself, just the current state of the field. We can do this by destructuring name and message. We can get it from this state. And let's, for now, log the name in the message. And also, as I said before, it's a good practice to clean the form after you send it. So again, we can solve this easily without accessing DOM or anything. We can just do set state. And I need to update here and on the button. Refresh. Hi here. And if we go to the console, we have our name and we have our message, and form is clean. And as you can see, no DOM manipulations at all. So the only way I get an event, but event is not the DOM event nature, it's React wrapped event. So not counts. Our form is almost ready. The only thing that we are missing is we need somehow to work with this data. Console log is not the right thing. But again, as I said before, what's the purpose of this form? Is just to get the user input and pass this input like somewhere on top of your application to the tree. So no need to write like jQuery Ajax here or anything like we're normally doing our forms or something like this. Just let's call these props on submit, on send, with a name and with message. Obviously, if I will try to do this now, let's reloads. Even if I just press send, this props on send is not a function because we haven't passed it. But we know now how to fix this. We can just use form prop types, telling that on send is a React prop types func, and it's required. And also form default props. Let's do by default. If we're not passing anything, we can do on send. We can just do an empty function. Done. So now if we click on the button, nothing will happen, but it will not fail because we are just calling empty function here. But the form is still clear itself. So if I hope I haven't forgotten anything here. Yeah, looks like. Any questions, or we're going to continue? Okay, no questions, looks like. So we have this ready, this ready. We have a channel list that we still need to do. It's like in general. And also we need to filter messages by channels and also get all the data from the web. So it will be a remote request. Doing this, let's see how the data flows through our application. For now, we have messages here in our app, and we cannot change this. And we cannot change this because if I even type something here and send this button, message will not go into appear here. We need to change that again. But the problem here that messages now is a constant, and it's a static constant. So no way to change this out of the box. We need to introduce something new. And as we saw currently with the form, we just need to introduce the state. What we can do constructor, again, super, and do the state messages. I can do like this because of ES6. And now we are going not to render the state, but not render messages here directly, but do these state messages. And I hope it will work out of the box. Yeah, it's still working, but we're now rendering messages from the state, and we can see these again by app. We have an array of 4 messages now. The next thing will be to finally start adding messages, new messages to this array of messages. So let's do on message sent, on send message. Send message. We are going to have name and text, as far as I remember from the form, as parameters. And what we need to do, we just need to create a new message here with IDs or anything, and then push it to the messages array. Okay, let's do this on send message. Nothing new here. Const new message equals, the main problem here, we need to do unique ID, which is, yeah, I will do a hackish way now. It will not be the way we normally do it for complex projects, but for now it's okay. So we are going to do these state messages, and then again the state messages dot length -1. So we're getting the last message, and then we're going to get this ID, and we're going to plus it 1 to it. Then it will be, let's do author here. Author, text, and channel. For now, let's do channel ID equals 1 because it's hard-coded. We don't have channels, really, channels now. We have this new message object, and we can add it const messages, and this will be a new array of these state messages, and then new message. This is again ES6 way to do array concat. Then we're going to this set state messages. The function is ready. We just need to pass it to the message pane, and on send message equals this on send message. And message pane will pass these to the form. It will be on send. I think form called it on send. Yeah. Equals these props on send message. So the idea is that we have an app that passes a function to the message pane, and then message pane passes this function to the form. And form, when we click on the button, just calls this function blindly because the form really doesn't know what's inside and what's going to happen or anything. So just like calling this function with the prop, with the params, data that we get from the fields. And then, so it will just be a callback to the apps function, and app will get this data. Let's try if it's working. Looks like it's not working because I missed something. Cannot read property props of undefined. Yeah, because we have not props here, it's functional component. Yay, it's working, as you can see. So we are passing the data, and now this data is going to this array. Obviously, it's not saved when I refresh. We don't have it back because we are still rendering the static array of messages that we predefined before. But it's something, finally, we have it. The next step for us will be to do, I think, the channel selector that we have here. Again, we have form, and let's do. We have form, we have message pane, and let's do channel selector. Channel list. Channel list index, yes. We need to import React, everything as it was before, nothing new. And how the channel lists will look like. Theoretically, it's really simple. We have a list of rows. We can hover on this row, and when you click, the channel is selected. So we have some kind of state, but it's not really complex. We just need to have some selected channel somehow passed, or maybe it's saved here, I don't know. Let's go to find out again. So we obviously are going to have some params here, but let's ignore for now. Let's do as we did before. It will be easier. I'm going to just copy the static data to the channel list. Let's have some channels, and we are going to render some array. Name channel list. All div. We are going to do channels map. We saw that already as when we did messages. We have ID and we have name. We will need both because, as you remember, the problem with the key. Oops. Notation is broken. And let's do div class name. Channel list, as far as I remember, item and name. and we're going to close it. Yeah, I hope for now it's going to be okay. We're going to import channel list from channel list. And this is cool that you can see your syntactic errors just here without any problems. Almost looks like I broke something. Reactor element type should be null, undefined Boolean number should be a string or reactor class. Yes, because I think I forgot to export default channel list. Okay, so for some reasons we don't have. Yay, we have names. And yeah, it's the CSS and hover. At least we have names, everything here ready. We just need to fix these by passing a key. So React will not complain. Yeah, no complain. The thing that's left, it's the clicking to select the state and just show somehow this selection. So let's introduce selection now, but before we are going to start, I want to simplify this a little bit and introduce the channel component, which are going to have name, and for now, let's do only name. Oops. Atom sometimes too smart. Yeah, we're going to render this, and let's do channel. No need for key here. Still working, but we have another component now, which reads a little bit better. So selection. Let's imagine that we have some selected ID, and let's that const selected ID equals 2. So the second channel is selected. I don't know why. And we somehow need to pass these to the channel and to find the selected thing. How we can do this? First of all, we need to implement this visually on the channel. So channel theoretically could know, is it selected or not? Is selected. We can pass this property to channel just to differentiate between them. Then we need to change a little bit the syntax here. The return. And depends on the is it selected or not. We can do different class names. Is selected. If it's selected, then we are going to have channel list item and channel list item selected. Otherwise, it will go into be channel list item. And just render it here. So if I pass now to all channels is selected like true, we're going to see all channels being selected. Yes, so all of them are selected now. Which is not our case. We want to select only the second channel. We can change this really easily by do const is selected. and just compare selected channel, selected ID to current ID. If it's the case, yay, we have the second channel selected. If we do the first one channel is selected, really easy. Problem is now that all these params are inside the channel list. It will be cool to pass them from the parent. So let's do that. We can get the params now like channels and selected channel ID. Get it as a props. Channels will be mapping, select channel ID here, the only thing, and go to app.js. Selected channel ID, let's do again 2, and move channels here. Not for this. Works. Now the data is passed from the parent. We can change the params. And from channel list perspective, nothing really changes because we just still represent the data that we're getting. Everything is pure functions. We're getting the data, we're getting the DOM back. But we have one interaction here. We have on click. So obviously this data we need to store somewhere. We need to store what channel is selected now. And we have this already. We have state on our app.js. So let's do that. We can do selected channel ID, which will be by default, two channels, both. So we have channels, and we have selected channel ID will be by default channels, first element ID. So now we can render that from this state and this state selected channel ID. Comma. Yay, we have the first channel selected and everything controlled by the state. So the thing here that on click, when we're clicking the channel, we just need to tell the parent that new selected channel ID is changed. Let's do that. So on click here on div, we need to do something. Let's do one click. Channel will be super simple in this case. It will be getting just a param, just a function, and we'll be calling this function when it will be clicked. Nothing really interesting here. Now we just need to pass this function somehow to the channel on the channel list. We can do a new on click function that is, maybe let's do on channel select, which will be a function that really what it's doing, it's calling on select with an ID. So we are creating a new closure every time we render, and this on select we're going to get from the app, from the parent. Again, we can use prop types, default props, or everything. I will just simplify this to save the time. And we need to pass these on select. Here, it will be this on channel select. Let's write this on channel select. That will get an ID. And we'll just this set state selected channel ID. ID will be super simple. We just need to bind this again. This on channel select, this on channel select, bind this. And channel select, this function never used. Looks like I missed something. Yeah, because I haven't passed the param here. On click will be, oops, not Zoom chat. On channel select. And now we can click and this changes the state. We can see these here again, select the channel ID 3, select channel ID 2, 1. Everything is working. We are getting the channel list here rendered. Everything is good. What we are still missing, it's the filtering messages and network request. It's going to be kind of simple. To filter the messages, what we need to do is not to return the state messages every time, but to filter them. Let's do filtered messages. What these filtered messages will do, it will return the state messages dot filter, and we need to get channel ID from the messages and need to compare this channel ID with this state selected channel ID. And as you can see, now we are getting our messages filtered. Super simple and just JavaScript function. No React, no magic, no anything, just JavaScript. This is also the cool part of React because it's a really thin layer on top. You're just constructing components with a couple of extra functions. And all other code, all the business logic is just pure JavaScript. Because as you can see here, we're just like using arrays, we are filtering stuff, we're just passing data back and forth. But the only magic thing here is this set state and nothing more. The last thing that's left is to get the data from the remote, from the network. Maybe you have any questions that I can answer. Sorry, I already talked a lot. So no questions, let's continue then in a really fast manner. For the network request, I already have this remote storage file that no need to go and reiterate. It's a really simple wrapper around Firebase, which is a remote database. And we have a database creator also, which is just Firebase initializer, which, yes, and I will make all the code available after the webinar. What remote storage is doing is just like having a couple of functions like get messages, get channels, and everything, and just returning promises in reality. So let's do that. Let's get our messages from the network request. How we can do this and when we need to do this. React, as there was already a question about this component, it's not only a render method and state and refs that we can use, it's also a lot of live hooks that we can do. A component supports, like, as far as I remember, like kind of 6 live hooks, something like this. I'm not sure, not remember it hard, but you can control any state of your component. So when components are going to be mounted, when it's already mounted, when it's going to be unmounted, and all this stuff, and when it's going to be updated, you can control all this stuff, and you can call your extra business logic at this moment. So what do we need to do? Every time we already rendered some stuff on the screen, it will be a cool thing to start doing a network request, because user will see some response, and then you can start doing network requests. You can render the spinner or anything. It's way better than just staring at the blank white page. Let's do this. Let's define components. Did mount? component did mount. It's the main, like one of the hooks, and it will be called when the DOM is already flashed and component rendered, so user will see something on the page. We can do the just console log to be sure. If we refresh, looks like I broke something. Component did mount. Component, yeah. That's why it's really healthy to do console logs. Yeah, we have here. So it's working. Let's do a network request. To do that, first let's import all the stuff that we have. It's called get messages. Get messages from storage. So now if we do, and this component did mount, we can just call these get messages. It will return us a promise. And inside this promise, when it's resolved, we can get messages. And what we can do really easily, we can just set state messages. And as you can see, super simple. And by doing this, we really just finish our network request. So we will fire this when the message is here. We just set in the state, and React will do everything for us to render stuff, to update everything that we have. And yeah, it's good. The problem here that we also have our messages hard-coded. So let's remove this. And by default, messages are going to be an empty array. Let's try this now. Could not find storage because it's called remote storage. It's not storage. Nothing, nothing, nothing. And finally, we have our messages. And it was a network request. It's really hard to see here, but yeah, it was a network request, as you can see. And we still have our messages because I have total copy of the hard-coded messages, as we saw before, in my Firebase. So yeah, and everything that we need to do, it's only calling this. Let's do the same with the channels. With channels, it's a little bit more complex because we need to set the channels and also select the channel ID, which is channels first ID. Yeah, a little bit more complex. Again, now here, and channels will be an empty array. And we can remove our data. Refresh, nothing, 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 boom, we have our data. And obviously, as you can see, I especially did not merge these promises into two by like promise all or anything. So you can see that this is two asynchronous network requests that will finish in a different time frame. But from React, it's not a problem. So messages came, we are trying to render them. Channels are first, we're trying to render them. And when the second one is here, we just like render both. From React perspective, it's totally not really important when the state is called or anything. Obviously, it's not really the best practice. Normally, if you want like to do data to be synced, you need to merge two promises. But I just left it for special case. The last two things that left is to save messages, obviously, to the server and do a real time. Let's do save message. It will be really boring. We have save message here, and we have our onSend message. We're going to call save message, new message. And this is all, I hope. So let's do a first message here. It will be funny if it will fail now. It's failing now, amazing. And even, yes, it's failing now because now it will be here. We have coded channel ID to 1, and we just need to update to the state selected channel ID. Now it will be correct one. But As you can see before, it was first here, but it's went to the general room. So first, it's here. If I refresh, it's still here. So we are saving our data to the server just with one line. And again, let's do on new message. What should be happening on new message? On new message, it's a little bit more, it's different. It's not returning promise or anything. It's just a callback. So you need to pass the function to this function when the new message is coming. So, yeah, let's do this. We can set up this message on component did mount, wherever we did this. It will be on new message. What we really need to do is we need to get this new message. And then just really do the same what we did here. Add new message to the end of state messages and the set new state. Let's test it. So I will do a special another tab. Let's go to water cooler. Click send, and it's there also. So real time without any problems. And what is really cool here that we just still operating through set state. This is the only like knob that we are trying to turn back and forth just to update the whole UI. No extra like going again to the DOM elements or updating, like passing the new props. You're just like using set state everywhere, and it renders, it updates the whole tree. If you want to see how it updates, you can just trace React updates. And as you can see, like every time it's blue, that the components are rendered. And I suspect that this is everything that I wanted to tell you. So we have, I think we can have a Q&A session if you want. Is it overkill to make each constant component like message list, message pane? No, it's not an overkill at all. For React, it's really, really easy, and you can go as deep as you want. If it really makes sense, because I'm not sure if it really makes sense to do like every div a component, but if you think that from your perspective and from your mental map, it's really good, just go and do it. Because I never saw any big problems, or when you have like too many components on the page to render. Yeah, and tomorrow we are going to introduce into the super complex Slack killer Redux. Now we are going to see what it is, why, when do you need it, and do you really need it, and how to do that. It will be a little bit more complex comparing to today's sessions, because Redux is sometimes hard to understand, but I will try to do my best to describe it. Looks like we don't have any other questions. This code will be available on GitHub or GitLab, I'm not sure where. And I hope that Codementor will like send some notes on that. If it's not the case, I will try to comment on this session that we just got. So yeah, hope to see you all tomorrow. Bye-bye.